They say silence is golden, but for Sarah Morrison, silence became something far more powerful. It became her weapon. Picture this. You're 10 weeks pregnant, sitting across from your husband at your anniversary dinner. You're about to share the happiest news of your life. But when you tell him you're expecting, his face drains of color, not mayonnaise, not excitement, just cold, calculated dread. That's when Sarah's perfect life began to crumble. Her college sweetheart, the father of her twin daughters, the man she'd sacrificed her career for. He was hiding something, something that would destroy everything she'd built. But here's where the story gets interesting. While everyone watched Sarah Morrison disappear into silence, broken and defeated, they had no idea what she was really doing. Because 6 months later, she would walk into Chicago's most exclusive gala on the arm of a billionaire, 7 months pregnant, and bring her husband's empire crashing down in a single night. This is the story of how a woman turned silence into the ultimate revenge. And trust me, you won't see this ending coming. For 10 years, Sarah Morrison thought she knew her husband. She thought she understood the man who'd courted her in college, who'd proposed on a beach in Malibu, who'd held her hand through 2 difficult pregnancies with their twin daughters. She thought their marriage was solid, built on a foundation of shared dreams and mutual respect. She was wrong about all of it. The truth began to unravel on their 10th anniversary in a dimly lit Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago. Marcello's was expensive, romantic, the kind of place where proposals happened and anniversaries were celebrated. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over white tablecloths. The scent of garlic and fresh basil hung in the air. Sarah had dressed carefully for the occasion, wearing the emerald green dress David had always loved. She'd spent an hour on her hair and makeup, wanting everything to be perfect. Because tonight, she had news. News that would change everything. "David, I have something to tell you," she said, reaching across the table for his hand. He didn't take it. His eyes were fixed on his phone, his thumb scrolling through emails. Sorry, babe. Work crisis. What is it?" Sarah withdrew her hand, feeling the first flutter of unease, but she pushed it aside. This was good news, happy news. He'd be thrilled once she told him. "I'm pregnant." The phone clattered onto the table. The sound echoed in the sudden silence between them. David's face drained of all color. His eyes widened, then narrowed. For 3 long seconds, he just stared at her like she'd announced she had a terminal illness. "You're what?" "8 weeks," Sarah said, her smile faltering. "I know we weren't planning on more kids right now, but I thought..." "8 weeks?" His voice was tight, controlled, too controlled. "When were you going to tell me?" "I'm telling you now. At our anniversary dinner. I wanted it to be special." David's jaw clenched. He looked away, staring at something over her shoulder. "The timing is terrible. I'm in the middle of closing the lakeside development deal. Do you have any idea how much stress I'm under right now?" Sarah felt like she'd been slapped. I, I'm sorry. I didn't plan this, David. These things happen, but I thought you'd be happy. We always talked about having more children someday." "That was years ago, Sarah, before I built the company, before we had the twins, before..." He stopped himself, shook his head. "I need to use the restroom." He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his wine glass. Sarah watched him weave through the tables toward the back of the restaurant. He pulled out his phone before he even reached the bathroom door. Sarah sat alone at their anniversary table, the flickering candlelight mocking her. Around her, other couples laughed and talked. A young man 3 tables over was down on one knee, presenting a ring to his tearful girlfriend. The restaurant erupted in applause. Sarah felt nauseous, not from morning sickness, though that had been brutal for the past 2 weeks. This was different. This was the sick feeling of something fundamentally wrong. 20 minutes passed, then 25. Sarah checked her phone, wondering if David had somehow left without her. Finally, she saw him emerge from the hallway, his face composed but distant. When he sat down, his smile was plastic, forced. "Sorry about that. Had to take a call from Marcus about the development permits." "For 25 minutes at 9 o'clock at night?" "It's an $8 million project, Sarah. The work doesn't stop just because it's our anniversary." Sarah picked up her water glass just to have something to do with her hands. "So, about the baby, we should probably talk about..." That's great, honey. Really great. The words were right, but his tone was wrong. Flat, emotionless. We'll figure it out. When are you due? Mid-April. The doctor thinks April 15th, but you know how first dates can be approximate. David nodded mechanically. He picked up his menu. Should we order? I'm starving. And just like that, the moment passed. Sarah's pregnancy announcement, the news she'd been bursting to share for 2 weeks, was dismissed in less than 30 seconds. They ordered their meals. They ate in near silence. David checked his phone 17 times. When they left the restaurant, he didn't hold her hand. Sarah told herself she was overreacting. David was stressed about work. The pregnancy was unexpected. He just needed time to adjust to the idea. Everything would be fine once the shock wore off. She was spectacularly, devastatingly wrong. Over the next 2 weeks, David became a stranger. He worked late every single night, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. When he was home, he was distant, distracted. He slept in the guest room, claiming Sarah's pregnancy insomnia was keeping him awake. Their sex life, already dormant for 6 months, died completely. Sarah noticed other changes too. David had lost weight, at least 15 pounds. He joined an expensive gym downtown. He wore cologne now, something new and spicy that Sarah had never smelled before. He bought new clothes, modern and fitted, completely different from his usual conservative style. At night, alone in their king-size bed, Sarah would lie awake and wonder, was her husband having an affair? The thought seemed ridiculous. This was David, steady, reliable David, the man who'd built a successful real estate development company from nothing, the father of her children, her college sweetheart. But the doubt gnawed at her. The twins noticed too. Emma, always the more observant of the 6-year-old girls, asked one morning at breakfast, "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy eat with us anymore?" "Daddy's very busy with work right now, sweetie. But he used to read us bedtime stories. He doesn't do that anymore either." Olivia, the more sensitive twin, started crying. "Did we do something bad? Is Daddy mad at us?" Sarah's heart broke. She pulled both girls into her arms. "No, babies, no. Daddy loves you so much. He's got a lot on his mind right now. It has nothing to do with you." But privately, Sarah wondered if it had everything to do with her. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon when Sarah was 10 weeks pregnant. The morning sickness was at its worst. She'd thrown up 3 times before noon. The twins were at school and Sarah was home alone, lying on the couch with a cold compress on her forehead. Emma and Olivia burst through the door at 3:15, home from their half-day kindergarten schedule. Emma was clutching her iPad, practically vibrating with excitement. Mommy, guess what?" Sarah forced herself to sit up. "What is it, honey?" We saw Daddy at the ice cream store." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What? When?" "Just now, after school. Mrs. Peterson took us to get ice cream and Daddy was there." Olivia was jumping up and down. "He was with a really pretty lady. She had yellow hair like a princess." Emma thrust the iPad at Sarah. "I took a picture. I wanted to show you." With trembling hands, Sarah took the iPad. She opened the photo gallery. The most recent picture filled the screen. The image was slightly blurry, taken from a distance through the ice cream shop window. But it was clear enough. Crystal clear. David Morrison, her husband, sat at a small table with a young blonde woman. Beautiful, mid-20s at most, wearing a tight pink dress. David was feeding her a spoonful of ice cream. His face lit up with an expression Sarah hadn't seen in months, maybe years. The woman was laughing, her hand on David's arm, intimate and familiar. David had told Sarah he was in Milwaukee, at a development site, working. He'd lied. Sarah felt the room tilt. She gripped the iPad so hard her knuckles went white. "Mommy?" Emma's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Mommy, are you okay? You look funny." Sarah forced herself to breathe, to function, to not fall apart in front of her 6-year-old daughters who were staring at her with worried eyes. "I'm fine, baby. Just feeling a little sick from the pregnancy. Thank you for showing me. That was very thoughtful." "Is Daddy in trouble?" Olivia asked. "Mrs. Peterson said we're not supposed to eat ice cream before dinner." "No, sweetheart. Daddy's not in trouble." The lie tasted like ash in Sarah's mouth. That night, after those girls were asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. Her hands still shook as she logged into their phone account online, as saw. She'd never done this before, never felt the need to check up on David. Trust had been the foundation of their marriage. Past tense. The phone records loaded. Sarah scrolled through pages of calls and text. One number appeared over and over and over, hundreds of times, calls lasting 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. Text messages at all hours. Early morning, late night. During times David claimed to be in meetings, Sarah's heart pounded. She grabbed her personal cell phone, the one that wasn't linked to their family plan. She dialed the mystery number from a blocked caller ID. 2 rings, 3. Then a woman's voice, young and breathy. David, baby, you said you wouldn't call from the house phone. Is the psycho asleep yet? The psycho. Sarah. The psycho was Sarah. She ended the call without speaking, ran to the bathroom, threw up everything in her stomach, and then kept heaving until there was nothing left. When she finally emerged shaking and pale, David was standing in the bedroom doorway. He must have just gotten home. It was after 11. You're still up? He said, not quite meeting her eyes. Sarah walked past him, went to her nightstand, picked up her phone and the printed phone records she'd been carrying around all evening like evidence of a crime, which she supposed they were. Who is she? Sarah's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Calm, flat, dead. David's face changed. The mask of casual indifference slipped just for a second. Then he crossed his arms and leaned against the doorframe. I don't know what you're talking about. The blonde woman, the one you were having ice cream with today while you told me you were in Milwaukee. The one whose number appears 247 times on our phone bill this month. Sarah threw the papers at him. They scattered across the hardwood floor like accusations. Who is she? For a long moment, David just looked at her. Then something shifted in his expression. The pretense fell away entirely. What replaced it was cold, calculating. You want to do this? Fine. Her name is Amber Hayes. She's my executive assistant. How long? 6 months. He said it like he was discussing a business deal. And honestly, Sarah, can you blame me? Look at yourself. Sarah looked down. She was wearing old sweatpants and one of David's college t-shirts, faded and stretched out. Her hair was in a messy bun. She'd thrown up so many times today, she hadn't bothered with makeup. She was 10 weeks pregnant and looked every day of it. I'm pregnant with your baby, she whispered. Another baby I didn't ask for. David's voice rose. You made this decision completely on your own, just like you make every decision in this house. What I wear, what we eat, what activities the girls do. You run everything, Sarah. You control everything. I'm just the ATM that funds your perfect little life. I quit my job to raise our children. I didn't ask you to. You decided to be a martyr, and now you use it as a weapon every time we fight. I gave up my career for you. Well, congratulations. You're 40 pounds heavier than when we got married. You're exhausted all the time. All you talk about is the twins' school schedule and household repairs. When was the last time you made me feel like a man instead of just a paycheck? Each word was a knife. Sarah felt them cutting, felt herself bleeding. How long has she worked for you? Her voice was barely audible. 8 months. So you hired her and immediately started sleeping with her. She pursued me. She saw something in me that you stopped seeing years ago. David pushed off the doorframe, stood up straight. She's exciting. She's ambitious. She listens when I talk about work instead of zoning out. She makes me feel alive again. And she's not trying to trap me with another kid I don't want. Trap you? We've been married for 10 years. And I've been slowly dying for at least 3 of them. David's eyes were hard, pitiless. I'm done, Sarah. This marriage is over. It's been over for a long time. I was just too much of a coward to admit it. Sarah sank down onto the edge of the bed. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Do you love her? The question hung in the air between them. David was quiet for so long Sarah thought he might not answer. I don't know yet, he finally said, but I know I don't love you anymore. Maybe I never did. Maybe I just loved what you represented. Your family's connections in Philadelphia. The way you made me look legitimate at the country club. The doors you opened for a self-made guy from Queens. The truth crystallized in that moment, sharp and cutting. Sarah hadn't been a wife. She'd been a social ladder, an accessory, a means to an end. And now that David had climbed as high as he needed, he was kicking the ladder away. David didn't move out. That would have been too easy, too clean. Instead, he stayed in the house and made Sarah's life a systematic hell. He moved his things into the guest bedroom the next day, claiming he needed space to think. But Sarah heard him on the phone late at night, his voice low and intimate. She'd stand in the hallway outside the guest room, her hand pressed against her growing belly, listening to her husband laugh with his mistress. The twins noticed immediately that something was wrong. 6-year-olds were more perceptive than adults gave them credit for. Emma started having nightmares. Olivia began sucking her thumb again, a habit she'd broken 2 years ago. One morning at breakfast, Olivia asked in her small, scared voice, "Daddy, why don't you hug Mommy anymore?" David barely looked up from his phone. "Mommy and Daddy are going through a rough patch right now, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups need space." "What's a rough patch?" Emma demanded. At 6, she was already fierce, protective of her mother. "It means things are complicated," David said dismissively. "Are you getting divorced?" Emma's question fell like a bomb into the morning quiet. Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. David's eyes flickered to her, then away. "We're figuring things out," he said. "Now finish your cereal. You're going to be late for school." Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to throw her coffee cup at his head. She wanted to grab him by his expensive new shirt and demand to know when he'd become this cold stranger wearing her husband's face. Instead, she did what she'd been doing for 2 weeks. She stayed silent. She swallowed the rage and hurt and terror. She smiled at her daughters and told them everything would be okay. She was learning that sometimes the biggest lies we tell are to the people we love most. 3 days later, on a Thursday evening, David cornered Sarah in the kitchen after the twins were in bed. He was holding a folder. "We need to talk about how this is going to work," he said. Sarah was loading the dishwasher, a task that David had never once helped with in 10 years of marriage. What is going to work?" "The divorce. I've consulted with an attorney. Marcus Reed, best divorce lawyer in Chicago." Of course he had. While Sarah had been throwing up every morning and taking care of their children and trying to hold the shattered pieces of her life together, David had been planning his exit strategy. "Here's what's going to happen," David continued. "You're going to file for divorce. Quietly. No drama, no social media posts about what a bastard I am. No crying to your friends at the country club. Clean and simple." Sarah turned to face him, her hands still dripping with dishwater. "And if I don't?" David's smile was reptilian. "Then I will destroy you in court. I'll prove you're an unfit mother." "That's insane. I'm a good mother. Those girls are my entire world." "Are you, though?" David pulled photos from the folder. Glossy 8x10s that made Sarah's blood run cold. "Because I have evidence that suggests otherwise." The first photo showed Sarah in the grocery store parking lot, her face twisted in anger, grabbing Olivia's arm. What the photo didn't show was that Olivia had run toward the parking lot entrance toward traffic. Sarah had grabbed her daughter to prevent her from being hit by a car, but out of context, it looked like abuse. The second photo showed Sarah at the wine store at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, carrying a bag with 3 bottles. "That was for book club," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Was it? Can you prove that? Because to a judge, it looks like day drinking. And combined with these prescription records," he pulled out another paper. "Xanax, prescribed by Dr. Stevens. You've been on anti-anxiety medication. 2 years ago, when my father died. I was on it for 3 months and then stopped." Will a judge care about that, or will they see a pattern of instability? A woman who screams at her children, drinks during them, takes pills, and oh yes, told her best friend she doesn't even want the baby she's carrying. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "How did you—" "Jessica Price, Amber's best friend. She was in the bathroom stall at the country club 2 weeks ago when you and Rachel were talking. She heard you say, and I quote, 'I don't know if I can do this anymore. I can't handle 3 kids. I don't even know if I want this baby.' She's willing to swear to that in an affidavit." Sarah had said that. In a moment of exhausted desperation, overwhelmed by the morning sickness and her husband's betrayal, she'd broken down to Rachel. It had been a moment of weakness, of fear, not a genuine desire to not have the baby. But David was right. But David was, to a judge, it would sound damning. What do you want? Sarah whispered. David pulled out another paper. I want you to sign this. It's a preliminary separation agreement. You get $800,000. The Toyota. You can stay in the house until it sells, maximum 6 months. The girls stay in their school. We split custody 50-50. 800,000? This house alone is worth 1.8 million. Your company is heavily leveraged. I have debts, Sarah, lots of them. Once we sell the house and liquidate assets, the total marital estate is about 1.6 million. 800,000 is half. You should be grateful I'm being this generous. Generous? You're cheating on me while I'm pregnant with your child, which is exactly why I'm offering you a clean exit. You sign the papers, you don't make a scene, you keep your mouth shut, and I won't pursue emergency custody of Emma and Olivia. But if you fight me, David leaned in close. If you fight me, Sarah, I will take those girls. I will prove you're a danger to yourself and to them. You'll get supervised visitation if you're lucky, and I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly why. Sarah couldn't breathe. The kitchen was spinning. This couldn't be happening. This had to be a nightmare she'd wake up from. I need to think about it, she managed to say. You have 24 hours. Then the offer drops to 600,000 and I file for emergency custody modification immediately. David straightened up, smoothed his tie. Oh, and Sarah, don't bother hiring an attorney. You can't afford anyone who can beat Marcus Reed. You have no income, no savings I don't know about, and no leverage. This is the best deal you're going to get. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Sarah standing there, one hand on her barely showing pregnant belly, the other gripping the counter to keep from collapsing. The next morning, Friday, was the twins' school spring fundraiser. It was an annual event Sarah had helped organize for the past 3 years. Bake sale, silent auction, performances by the kindergarten through 3rd grade classes. The whole school community attended. Sarah almost didn't go. She'd barely slept. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She felt like she was moving through binder, every action slow and difficult. But Emma and Olivia had been looking forward to it for weeks. They'd helped Sarah bake brownies and cookies. They'd made artwork for the auction. She couldn't let them down. She pulled herself together, washed her face, put on a modest blue dress and minimal makeup, pulled her hair into a simple ponytail. She looked pale and exhausted, but presentable. The school gym was decorated with streamers and balloons. Long tables held baked goods and craft projects. Parents milled around with paper cups of coffee, chatting and laughing. Sarah stationed herself at the bake sale table, arranging her brownies, forcing a smile. Emma and Olivia ran off to see their friends, high on sugar and excitement. Sarah was helping a mother of a 2nd grader pick out cupcakes when she heard it. The change in the room's energy, the sudden hush followed by a wave of whispers. She looked up. David had just walked into the gym with Amber. Sarah felt her heart stop, actually felt it freeze in her chest for one long, impossible moment. Amber Hayes was everything Sarah was not. 26 years old, blonde, impossibly beautiful in a tight red dress and 4-inch heels. Completely inappropriate for an elementary school fundraiser, but devastating nonetheless. She had her arm looped through David's, laughing at something he'd said, tossing her perfect hair. The entire school community stared. Sarah could see the calculation happening in real time. Mothers she'd known for years looking from Sarah to Amber and back again, putting the pieces together. David Morrison had traded up. Oh my God, the mother buying cupcakes breathed. Is that his girlfriend? Sarah couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. She watched David parade Amber around the gym like a prize, introducing her to people. This is Amber, my executive assistant. The lie was so transparent it was insulting. Sarah felt the room closing in. Her vision narrowed. She couldn't do this, couldn't stand here selling brownies while her husband flaunted his mistress in front of their daughter's entire school. She abandoned the bake sale table, pushed through the crowd, made it to the bathroom just in time to throw up violently into the toilet. Morning sickness and humiliation combined into a toxic mix. When she finally emerged, shaking and pale, 3 women were waiting for her: Amanda Peterson, Claire Mitchell, and Diane Ross. Women she'd considered friends. Women she'd had coffee with, whose children played with Emma and Olivia. "Sarah, sweetie," Amanda said in that awful, pitying voice. "We had no idea things were so bad at home." "Are you okay?" Claire asked. "You look terrible. Should we call someone?" "David seems so much happier now," Diane added. Then realizing how that sounded, hastily added, "Not that we're taking sides, it's just, well, maybe this is for the best. Maybe you both need a fresh start." Sarah stared at them. These women who'd smiled to her face for years, who'd attended her birthday parties and baby showers, who were now in the span of 30 seconds, rewriting history to make David the hero and Sarah the tragic, unstable wife who'd let herself go. "Excuse me," Sarah said quietly. She walked past them, out the bathroom, through the gym. She didn't look at David or Amber, didn't look at anyone. She went straight to her car in the parking lot, got in, locked the doors, and then she broke. Sobs tore through her so violently she thought she might shatter. She cried until there were no more tears, until her throat was raw, until the sun had shifted in the sky. Through the car window she could see into the gym. She watched Emma and Olivia performing in their class's song and dance routine. Watched them searching the crowd for their mother, their faces falling when they didn't see her. She watched David stand with Amber, his arm around her waist, playing the proud father for the cameras parents were snapping. Sarah had always believed love was the foundation of marriage. That commitment meant something. That vows were sacred. She'd been a fool. In the parking lot of her daughter's elementary school, 11 weeks pregnant and utterly alone, Sarah Morrison learned a truth that would reshape everything. Sometimes the person you love most in the world is the person most capable of destroying you. And sometimes they do it in front of an audience, just to make sure the destruction is complete. Sarah spent the weekend in a fog. David avoided her, spending Saturday and Sunday at the office, translation, with Amber. The twins sensed something catastrophic had happened, but they were too young to understand. Emma asked why Mommy hadn't stayed for their performance. Sarah lied and said she'd felt sick. Another lie in a growing collection. Monday morning, Sarah called Rachel. They'd been best friends since freshman year at Northwestern, roommates for 3 years, bridesmaids at each other's weddings. Rachel had gone to law school while Sarah had taken the marketing job that eventually became marriage and motherhood. Now Rachel was a family law attorney at a prestigious Chicago firm. If anyone could help Sarah, it was Rachel. They met at a coffee shop far from Sarah's neighborhood, away from prying eyes and pitying glances. Rachel took one look at Sarah's face and immediately pulled her into a fierce hug. "Tell me everything." Sarah did. The affair, the pregnancy, the ultimatum, David's threat to take the girls, the school fundraiser humiliation. All of it spilled out in a torrent of words that left her breathless and shaking. Rachel's expression grew darker with every sentence. By the time Sarah finished, Rachel's hands were clenched into fists on the table. "That absolute bastard," Rachel hissed. "He's been planning this. The photos, the affidavits, the custody threats. This isn't spontaneous, Sarah. He's been building a case against you for months." "What do I do?" "First, you don't sign anything. That settlement offer is garbage. You're entitled to half of the marital assets, and I guarantee there's more than 1.6 million. Men like David always hide money." Rachel pulled out her phone, started typing notes. "Second, we document everything. Every interaction with David, every threat, every time he sees Amber. We build our own case." He said, "I can't afford a lawyer who can beat Marcus Reed." "You can't, but I'm not charging you. This one's pro bono." "Rachel, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering. Actually, I'm insisting." Rachel's eyes blazed with protective fury. "That son of a bitch wants to play dirty? Fine. We'll show him dirty." Over the next hour, Rachel laid out a strategy. Sarah needed a private investigator to document David and Amber's affair. She needed a forensic accountant to dig into Morrison Properties' finances. She needed medical documentation of her pregnancy complications and mental health. "This is going to cost money," Sarah said quietly. "How much do you have saved?" Sarah hesitated. There was one thing David didn't know about. Her grandmother had died 3 years ago and left Sarah $18,000. She'd deposited it in a separate account David had never known existed. Emergency money, insurance against disaster. Well, disaster had arrived. 18,000, Sarah admitted. That'll get us started. I know a PI, Tom Harrison, best in the business. And I'll call my friend's brother, Robert Parks. He's a forensic accountant, works white-collar fraud cases. He owes me a favor. A favor big enough for this? Rachel smiled grimly. His sister Helen is an OBGYN at Northwestern Memorial. She's actually the one who recommended you use the emergency fund. She's been worried about you since your appointment last week. Sarah blinked. Dr. Parks is Robert's sister? Small world. Helen called me after she saw your blood pressure numbers. She's the one who suggested you might need legal help. The realization that people were already rallying around her, building a safety net Sarah hadn't known she needed, made her throat tight with emotion. Okay, Sarah said. What do I do first? You go home and act normal. Let David think you're beaten. While he's celebrating his victory, we investigate. We document. We prepare. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in duplicity. Sarah played the defeated wife to perfection. She was quiet, compliant, avoiding conflict. She cooked dinner. She took care of the twins. She pretended David's late nights and obvious affair didn't bother her. Meanwhile, Tom Harrison's surveillance began. He photographed David and Amber at expensive restaurants, at hotels, at her apartment downtown. Every lunch charged to the company credit card. Every business trip that was actually a romantic getaway. Robert Parks started his deep dive into Morrison Properties. Within 3 days, he called Sarah with his first findings. Your husband is either incredibly incompetent or incredibly crooked, Robert said. I'm betting on crooked. He's got money moving through at least 4 shell companies I've found so far. And this lakeside development project, the property exists, but there's an EPA flag on it from 2019. Contaminated soil. It'll cost millions to remediate before anything can be built. Is that fraud? If he's selling investors on the project without disclosing the contamination? Absolutely. Keep me digging. I think this rabbit hole goes deep. By week 14 of her pregnancy, Sarah had evidence. Photos of adultery, proof of misuse of company funds, a preliminary forensic report suggesting David was hiding significant assets. Rachel was impressed. This is good, really good. We can fight the custody threat. We can demand full disclosure of his finances. Sarah, I think we can actually win this. For the first time since the night of the discovery, Sarah felt something like hope. The 4-way settlement meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Sarah was 15 weeks pregnant now, barely showing, but definitely there. She dressed carefully in a navy blue business suit that still fit, though it was tight. She did her hair and makeup. She looked professional, strong, like someone who couldn't be pushed around. Rachel met her at the building where Marcus Reed's firm occupied 3 floors of prime downtown real estate. The opulence was meant to intimidate. Marble floors, original artwork, receptionists who looked like models. Don't let them rattle you, Rachel whispered as they were led to the conference room. We've got the evidence. We've got the truth. Stay calm. David was already there with Marcus Reed. David wore his power suit, the charcoal Armani Sarah had helped him pick out 2 years ago. Marcus Reed looked exactly like Sarah had imagined. Late 40s, silver hair, cold eyes, a smile that never reached past his teeth. Mrs. Morrison, Marcus said, standing to shake her hand. His grip was firm, calculated. Shall we begin? They sat. Rachel laid out folders with their evidence. Photos, hotel receipts, financial records. As you can see, Rachel began, we have substantial proof of Mr. Morrison's adultery and financial impropriety. We're prepared to... Before we begin, Marcus interrupted smoothly, my client would like to present some concerns. He slid a folder across the table to Sarah. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photos of her. Sarah in the grocery store parking lot, her face twisted in anger, grabbing Olivia's arm. Sarah at the wine store, Sarah crying in her car, medical records with Xanax prescriptions highlighted, an affidavit from Jessica Price about Sarah's comments. Sarah felt the room tilt. My client is deeply concerned about Mrs. Morrison's mental stability, Marcus said in that same smooth voice. Erratic behavior, potential substance abuse issues, statements expressing she doesn't want the child she's carrying. Quite frankly, we're worried about the safety of Emma and Olivia. Dude, this is character assassination, Rachel snapped. Every single one of these photos is taken out of context. Is it? Marcus interrupted. We have witnesses, photographic evidence, medical records, and quite frankly, Mrs. Morrison's appearance today suggests someone barely holding it together. Sarah looked down at herself. The suit was tight because she was pregnant. There was a small coffee stain on the sleeve from this morning when Olivia had bumped her cup. The makeup didn't quite hide the bags under her eyes from nights of stress-induced insomnia. She looked exactly like what David wanted. Unstable. Here's our revised offer, Marcus continued, sliding another paper across. $600,000. Mrs. Morrison signs over the house immediately. Temporary custody is 50-50, with Mr. Morrison maintaining primary residence so the girls can stay in their home and school. That's absurd, Rachel started. Or we file for emergency modification of custody based on concerning maternal behavior, Marcus said calmly. Mrs. Morrison would have supervised visitation every other weekend pending a psychological evaluation and drug screening. Sarah couldn't breathe. The conference room was too small, too hot. The walls were closing in. Mrs. Morrison, Marcus said, and his voice had a false kindness that made Sarah want to scream. My client genuinely wants what's best for Emma and Olivia. Right now, he's concerned you're not capable of caring for them. Perhaps you should focus on your health in this pregnancy and let Mr. Morrison handle the girls until you're more stable. You can't take my daughters. Sarah's voice came out as a whisper. We're not taking them. We're protecting them. Rachel slammed her folder shut. This meeting is over. Sarah, we're leaving. In the parking garage elevator, Sarah started shaking. By the time they reached Rachel's car, the shaking had become full-body tremors. I'm going to lose them, Sarah said. Oh God, Rachel, he's going to take my babies. No, he's not. This is a scare tactic. Judges don't grant emergency custody without clear evidence of immediate danger. But the photos are bullshit taken out of context and will prove it. But even Rachel's voice wavered slightly, because they both knew the truth. Family court judges were unpredictable. And David had money for an extended legal battle that Sarah didn't. Sarah made it to the trash can just in time to vomit. Stress and morning sickness and pure terror combined. When she straightened, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand, she saw David and Marcus emerging from the building. David looked directly at her, smiled, then climbed into his BMW and drove away. He'd wanted her to see him, wanted her to know that he'd won this round. What do I do? Sarah whispered. Rachel's jaw was tight. We fight, but Sarah, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Rachel had no idea how prophetic those words would become. The judge granted David's motion for temporary expanded custody. Sarah stood in family court at 18 weeks pregnant, listening to Judge Patricia Brennan read the order aloud. 70-30 custody split in David's favor. The girls would stay with David Sunday through Thursday. Sarah would have them Friday and Saturday. Given Mrs. Morrison's upcoming due date and need to prepare for the baby's arrival, Judge Brennan said, and considering the stability the children currently have in their father's primary residence, this arrangement serves the children's best interests pending a full custody evaluation. Sarah wanted to scream, wanted to tell the judge that David's stable primary residence was the house Sarah had been forced to move out of, that the stability was a lie David had constructed while systematically destroying her. But she stayed silent, said, "Yes, Your Honor," when required, walked out of the courthouse with Rachel beside her. This is temporary, Rachel kept saying. Once Robert finishes the forensic accounting, once we can prove David's fraud, by then I'll have lost my daughters. Sarah's voice was hollow. They'll have adjusted to living with him. The court won't want to disrupt them again. She was right, and they both knew it. The next few weeks were systematic torture. David moved back into the master bedroom of the house that was still legally half Sarah's. He claimed he needed it for work-from-home office space. Sarah was relegated to the guest room when she had the girls on weekends. The twins were confused and scared. Emma started having nightmares about her family breaking apart. Olivia regressed, clinging to Sarah during her limited visitation, crying when it was time to go back to Daddy's. And then there was Amber. Sarah first saw evidence of Amber in the house during a Friday pickup. A pair of expensive high heels by the front door. A coffee cup with lipstick marks in the sink. Amber's Instagram photos from inside what used to be Sarah's home. One photo in particular destroyed her. Amber sitting at the kitchen table with Emma and Olivia, helping them with art projects. The caption, "Getting to know these sweethearts," had bonus kids, future stepmom. The comments were enthusiastic. "They're so lucky to have you. You're going to be an amazing mom. This is so sweet." Sarah sat in her tiny apartment and stared at that photo for an hour. Her daughters, her kitchen table, her life, being lived by someone else. David's social media was equally painful. Carefully curated photos of him being dad of the year, the zoo, the aquarium, Chuck E. Cheese. Every post designed to show the world that he was thriving, that the girls were thriving, that life post-Sarah was better for everyone. The comments always included some variation of, "Where's their mother?" And someone would respond, "Going through some stuff, I heard. David's being so gracious about it." Sarah stopped looking at social media, stopped answering calls from anyone except Rachel and her mother, stopped going anywhere she might run into people from her old life. She was disappearing exactly as David had planned. The concerned messages started arriving. From Linda, David's mother. "Sarah, dear, David told me about your struggles. Please consider getting professional help, for the girls' sake." From former friends, "Thinking of you during this difficult time." From the twins' school counselor, "We've noticed some concerning behaviors in Emma and Olivia. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss their emotional well-being and home situation." Every message was well-intentioned. Every message implied that Sarah was the problem. She was being erased from her own story, rewritten as the unstable wife who couldn't handle the pressure of her perfect life. The breaking point came on a Wednesday night when Sarah was 18 weeks pregnant. She was alone in her apartment, the twins with David. She'd spent the evening staring at the forensic accounting reports Robert had delivered. David had hidden at least $4 million through shell companies and offshore accounts. The evidence was solid, but solid evidence required money to pursue. Attorney fees, expert witnesses, a court battle that could drag on for years. Rachel kept saying they could win, but Rachel wasn't the one bleeding money she didn't have, wasn't the one facing the possibility of losing her children while waiting for justice. At 9:30 p.m., Sarah started bleeding, not spotting, bleeding, bright red blood that soaked through her clothes and terrified her. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, called David. "What?" His voice was annoyed. She could hear Amber laughing in the background. "I'm bleeding. I need to go to the hospital. Can you watch the girls?" "I have plans. Call your mother." "My mother is in Florida visiting my sister. David, please, I need—" "Figure it out, Sarah. You're the one who wanted this baby." The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone. Her husband had just hung up on her while she was potentially having a miscarriage. With trembling fingers, she called Rachel, who arrived in 15 minutes. Rachel drove her to Northwestern Memorial Hospital while Sarah bled through 3 towels in the passenger seat. "It's going to be okay," Rachel kept saying. "You're going to be okay." But Sarah couldn't respond, couldn't do anything but pray. Please, not the baby. She could lose David, lose the house, lose everything else. But not the baby. Please, not the baby. At the ER, they rushed her back immediately. Dr. Helen Parks was on call, thank God. She ordered an immediate ultrasound. Sarah lay on the examination table for 3 hours, hooked to monitors, convinced she was losing the baby. David didn't call, didn't text, didn't come. Finally, Dr. Parks returned, her face serious. Sarah, the baby is fine." The relief was so overwhelming, Sarah started crying. "Thank God. Oh, thank God." "But," Dr. Parks continued, "you have a condition called placenta previa. Your placenta is partially covering your cervix. That's what's causing the bleeding. It's serious, Sarah. You need complete bed rest, no stress, no heavy lifting, no conflict. I have a custody battle. Then you need to decide what matters more." Dr. Parks pulled up a chair, sat down, took Sarah's hand. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Your stress hormones are through the roof. If you continue at this pace, you will either lose this baby or have a catastrophic hemorrhage during delivery that could kill you both. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest." Sarah lay there, hooked to machines, alone. Her husband was probably with his mistress right now. Her daughters were confused and scared. Her life was in ruins, and now her own body was betraying her. "What do I do?" she whispered. "You rest. You reduce stress. You focus on keeping yourself and this baby alive." Dr. Park squeezed her hand. "Everything else is secondary to that." Rachel stayed with Sarah all night, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside the hospital bed. At 2 a.m., Sarah's phone lit up with notifications. Instagram, someone had tagged her. With dread pooling in her stomach, Sarah opened the app. Amber's profile filled the screen. The most recent post, uploaded an hour ago, a photo of Amber's left hand, a massive diamond ring glittering in the sunset, the Chicago skyline behind her. The photo was professional, clearly planned. The caption, "He asked and I said yes, starting our forever with this incredible man. So grateful for second chances and new beginnings. Ash, engaged, our love wins, are blessed beyond measure." Chicago bride. The comments were already flooding in. Jessica, "OMG, babe, you deserve this after everything. So happy he finally got away from that toxic situation." Random followers, "Congratulations. Beautiful couple. True love always wins." Someone Sarah had gone to college with, "So happy for you both. Sometimes you have to let go of the past to embrace the future," David had proposed. While Sarah was in the ER fighting to save their baby, David had proposed to his mistress. Sarah's heart rate monitor started beeping frantically. The room spun. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't. Nurses rushed in. Dr. Parks appeared, her face concerned. "Sarah, I need you to calm down." But Sarah couldn't calm down. The panic attack was so severe they had to sedate her. When she woke up hours later, Rachel was there. The hospital room was quiet. Dawn light filtered through the blinds. "He proposed to her," Sarah said. Her voice sounded strange, flat, dead. "I know, I saw." Rachel's face was murderous. "Sarah, we're going to destroy him, I promise you." "No!" "What?" Sarah turned to look at her best friend. "Dr. Parks is right. This is killing me, literally killing me. I can't keep fighting like this." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I accept David's offer. All of it, the money, the custody arrangement, everything." "Sarah, you can't. I have to." Sarah placed her hand on her belly, where their baby was miraculously still alive. "I have to survive this. I have to get to the other side of this pregnancy alive. And I can't do that if I'm fighting David in court. But the evidence means nothing if I'm dead or if I lose this baby from stress." Sarah met Rachel's eyes. "I'm not giving up. I'm going underground. I'm going to let David think he won. And while he's celebrating, we're going to find out what he's really hiding." Rachel stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Okay, we'll play it your way. But Sarah, this better be strategic silence and not surrender." "Trust me," Sarah said, thinking of that Instagram post, of David's cold voice on the phone, of everything she'd lost. "It's strategy. And when I'm ready, when I'm strong again, David Morrison is going to regret every single thing he's done. She just had to survive long enough to make that happen." Sarah signed the settlement papers from her hospital bed. Rachel witnessed, her face tight with barely suppressed fury. Dr. Parks signed as a medical witness, documenting that Sarah was under extreme duress but mentally competent. The terms were devastating. $800,000 paid in installments over 2 years. Custody 70-30 in David's favor until the baby was born, then reevaluate. Sarah would move out of the house within 30 days. Non-disparagement agreement. Sarah couldn't speak about David publicly, on social media, or to any media outlets. David kept everything else. The house, the cars except the Toyota, the country club membership, the life they'd built together. Rachel tried one last time to change Sarah's mind. "We have evidence of fraud. We can fight this. Not while I'm pregnant, not while my life is at risk." Sarah's hand rested on her belly protectively. "This baby comes first." David's attorney, Marcus Reed, collected the signed documents with barely concealed satisfaction. Within hours, David's PR machine kicked into gear. The local society blog ran a headline, Morrison divorce settled amicably. David's Facebook post appeared that evening, carefully crafted to seem magnanimous. Grateful this difficult chapter is behind us. Sarah and I have reached an agreement that puts our daughters first. I wish her healing and happiness as she prepares for the birth of our son. No matter what, we'll always be family. Excited for new beginnings with my beautiful fiancée, Amber. Hashtag gratitude. Moving forward. Hashtag blessed. The comments made Sarah physically ill. You're handling this with such class. Those girls are so lucky to have a dad like you. Your ex is lucky you're being so generous given her issues. Amber is glowing. Congrats to you both. The narrative was complete. David was the hero. Sarah was the unstable one who'd given up. Amber was the beautiful new beginning. Sarah closed her laptop and didn't open social media again. She was released from the hospital with strict orders. Bed rest for 2 weeks, then modified activity only. No stress, no heavy lifting. Weekly monitoring for the placenta previa. If you have any more bleeding, you come in immediately, Dr. Parks instructed. Sarah, I mean it. This pregnancy is high risk now. You need to treat it as such. Sarah moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town at 20 weeks pregnant. The place was a fraction of the size of the lakefront house. Beige carpet, white walls, a view of the parking lot, but it was hers, paid for with the first settlement installment. She furnished it simply: a bed, a couch, a table and chairs, a nursery set for the baby. She didn't hang pictures or put up decorations. This wasn't a home, it was a hiding place, a staging ground. The rumors about her breakdown spread through her social circles like wildfire. I heard she's in therapy 3 times a week. Someone saw her at the grocery store looking absolutely terrible. David told Linda she refused to get treatment for depression. Poor thing, I guess the stress of the pregnancy just pushed her over the edge. Sarah let them talk. She stopped answering calls, except from Rachel, Dr. Parks, and her mother in Florida. She deleted all social media apps from her phone. She declined every invitation to coffee, to lunch, to check in. She disappeared. The world thought she was broken, hiding in shame. They had no idea she was working. Tom Harrison, the private investigator Rachel had hired, continued his surveillance. Every week, he sent updates, photos of David and Amber at expensive restaurants, always on the company card, photos of them at her downtown apartment, photos from their weekend in Napa Valley that David had claimed was a business conference. Your husband isn't even trying to hide it anymore, Tom reported. He takes her everywhere, acts like they're already married. Keep documenting, Sarah said. Everything. Robert Parks, the forensic accountant, went deeper into Morrison Properties' finances. What he found made Sarah's blood run cold. He's not just hiding money from you, Robert explained during one of their weekly calls. He's defrauding investors. That lakeside development project? The land is contaminated with toxic waste from an old factory. EPA records show remediation costs of at least $8 million. But David's selling investors on luxury condos with lake views. He's taking their money and funneling it offshore. How much money are we talking about? So far, I can trace $4.7 million in hidden assets. But I think there's more. He's got shell companies in Delaware, accounts in the Cayman Islands. The man's running a sophisticated fraud operation. Can you prove it? I'm building the case, but Sarah, this is federal crime territory. Wire fraud, tax evasion. If I'm right, David's looking at serious prison time. How long before you can prove it? I need more time, and I need him to feel completely safe, completely untouchable. If he suspects we're looking, he'll move everything and disappear. Then we wait, Sarah said. Waiting was torture. Every Friday when Sarah picked up the twins, she saw more evidence of Amber's presence in the house. Designer throw pillows, new artwork. Amber's expensive perfume lingering in the air. Emma and Olivia were quiet, confused. They asked questions Sarah couldn't answer. Why don't you live with us anymore, Mommy? Is Miss Amber going to be our new mommy? Daddy says you're too sick to take care of us. Are you going to die? Each question was a knife, but Sarah kept her face calm, her voice gentle. I'm not dying, baby. Mommy is just getting ready for your baby brother, and you'll always have me. Always. But her time with them was slipping away. 2 days a week, 48 hours out of 168. The twins were adjusting to life with David and Amber. The longer this went on, the harder it would be to undo. Sarah's 22nd week of pregnancy came and went. Then 24 weeks. Her belly grew. The baby kicked strong and healthy. Doctor. Park's careful monitoring showed the placenta previa was stable, not getting worse but not resolving either. You're doing better, Dr. Park said at the 25-week appointment. Blood pressure is down, stress hormones are lower. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. What Sarah was doing was playing dead, letting David think he'd won completely, while secretly, methodically, building her case. David's Facebook was a constant stream of his perfect new life. Photo of him and Amber and the twins at Navy Pier. Making memories with my girls and my bride-to-be, hashtag blended family, grateful. Photo of Amber helping the twins bake cookies. She's going to be an amazing stepmom. Hashtag lucky family. Wedding countdown posts, 8 weeks until I marry my best friend. Shad can't wait. The wedding was scheduled for early September. David and Amber were having a destination ceremony in Napa Valley. Small and intimate, just 75 guests. The twins were going to be flower girls. Sarah wasn't invited. Obviously, she screenshot every post, saved every photo, documented everything. Amber's Instagram was even more pointed. Professional photos in Sarah's former house. Home is where the heart is. Hashtag new beginnings, dress shopping photos. Found the dress. Can't wait to walk down the aisle. Hash bride-to-be. Close-ups of her engagement ring. Still can't believe this is real. Hashtag blessed, lucky girl. Comments poured in, mostly positive. But occasionally someone would ask, what about his ex-wife? Jessica, Amber's best friend, always jumped in to respond. She's getting help. David tried so hard to make it work, but sometimes you have to prioritize your own happiness. Translation. Sarah was crazy, David was a saint, and Amber was his reward for suffering through a terrible marriage. Sarah read every comment, burned every word into her memory. Week 26 of her pregnancy, David posted, big things coming. Excited to announce some major developments at the Gala next week. Hashtag Morrison Properties, hashtag Building the Future. The Chicago Charity Gala, the biggest social event of the year. 500 of Chicago's wealthiest and most influential people. David had been on the planning committee for 2 years. He'd never managed to get Sarah into the exclusive event. Now he was attending with Amber. The gala was where David would close his lakeside development deal. Robert had confirmed it. 20 investors, $500,000 each. $10 million total for a project built on contaminated land that would never see construction. It was also, according to Robert, where David would commit federal wire fraud in front of witnesses. The FBI has been building a case based on my forensic work, Robert told Sarah. They just need David to actually commit the crime. Once those contracts are signed, they can move. Sarah sat in her apartment, her hand on her pregnant belly, and made a decision. She called Rachel. I need you to do something for me. I need you to get me a dress. Something stunning, something that shows I'm pregnant and proud of it. Midnight blue. I'll text you my measurements. Sarah, what are you planning? I'm going to the gala. David won't want you there. David doesn't get a vote. It's a charity event. Tickets are available to anyone who can afford them. Which you can't. I know. Sarah took a deep breath. That's why I need you to make a phone call for me. So the call came 2 days later. Unknown number. Sarah almost didn't answer. Mrs. Morrison, my name is James Hartley. I believe we have a mutual problem named David Morrison. Sarah's heart stopped. James Hartley, the tech billionaire, the man who'd sold his AI logistics company for $3.2 billion and promptly disappeared from public life. How did you get this number? I've been investigating your husband for 6 months. My people tell me you're building a case too. His voice was calm, measured. East Coast accent, educated. I know you've hired Tom Harrison and Robert Parks. Actually, I recommended Robert to you through his sister. You, what? Dr. Parks mentioned you needed a forensic accountant. I told her Robert was the best. I've been funding his investigation from the start. Sarah's mind reeled. Why? 3 years ago, my foundation invested $10 million in David's Green Communities initiative. Affordable, sustainable housing for underserved neighborhoods. Noble cause. Except the communities don't exist. David took the money and ran. When I started asking questions, he threatened to sue me for defamation. Why didn't you sue him? Because lawsuits take years, and men like David hide assets before the first motion is filed. I need him to commit a new fraud publicly, with federal witnesses. Then that FBI can seize everything at once. Pause. I understand you're planning to attend the gala. How do you... I make it my business to know things, Mrs. Morrison. The question is, would you like to attend as my guest? Sarah's breath caught. Why would you do that? Because I want justice. For you, for my foundation, for everyone David has destroyed. And I want him to understand that he lost because he underestimated the women in his life. Another pause. Also, I'd very much like to see his face when you walk in. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. I'm 27 weeks pregnant and I'm huge. You're powerful, there's a difference. They met 2 days later at a coffee shop an hour outside Chicago. James Hartley was not what Sarah expected. He was 42, tall, fit in an understated way. He wore jeans and a simple navy sweater. No flash, no ostentation. Worth $3 billion, but you'd never know it from looking at him. His eyes were kind, intelligent. When he looked at Sarah's pregnant belly, there was no judgment, just quiet respect. Thank you for meeting me, he said. They talked for 2 hours. James laid out everything he knew about David's fraud, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the lakeside development scam that was about to net David $10 million in investor money for a project that could never be built. The FBI has been watching him for months, James said. They just need him to close the deal with witnesses present. Once those contracts are signed, it's federal wire fraud across state lines. And you're sure they'll arrest him? I have contacts in the bureau. Yes, they'll arrest him. Probably not at the gala, too much of a scene. But the next morning they'll have enough for a warrant. Sarah absorbed this. Her husband was going to prison. The twins would lose their father. It would devastate them. But they'd also be free of his lies, his manipulation, his cruelty. When David's assets are seized, Sarah said slowly, I don't want them. James raised an eyebrow. You're entitled to half. I'll take enough to support my children and rebuild our lives. The rest goes to your foundation. Actually build those green communities David promised. James studied her for a long moment. You're not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it for my daughters, so they know their mother fought back. So they know silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. They shook hands. Over the next 3 weeks, Robert completed his forensic report. 347 pages of documented fraud. Tom delivered his final surveillance files. James coordinated with the FBI, and Sarah prepared. At 28 weeks pregnant, she stood in her small apartment bathroom while Rachel helped her get ready. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo. Her makeup was flawless, bold red lip. The dress was stunning, midnight blue silk with an empire waist that showed her pregnancy proudly. When Sarah looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. For 6 months, she'd been the broken wife, the unstable one, the woman everyone pitied. Tonight, she was something else entirely. You look terrifying, Rachel said, in the best possible way. Good. James picked her up at 7. The town car was understated, black and simple. Inside, he handed her a small earpiece. Robert's on the line. He'll walk us through the evidence presentation. The projection system is already set up. Sarah's hands were shaking. James noticed, covered them with his own. You don't have to do this. I can handle the exposure myself. No, Sarah's voice was steady. I need to be there. I need him to see my face when his world ends. Then let's go end his world. As they drove through Chicago's glittering streets toward the Four Seasons, Sarah felt her baby kick. Strong, healthy kicks that reminded her why she'd survived the last 6 months. Not for revenge, not for justice, for this, for the future, for her children. David Morrison had made a critical mistake. He'd thought pregnant meant weak, thought silent meant defeated, thought he could discard Sarah Morrison like yesterday's trash. Tonight, he was going to learn otherwise. The Four Seasons ballroom blazed with light and luxury. Crystal chandeliers caught the glow of 1,000 candles. 500 of Chicago's elite mingled beneath soaring ceilings, champagne flutes in hand. The charity gala was the social event of the season, and everyone who mattered was there. David Morrison stood near the center of the room, resplendent in his custom tuxedo. Beside him, Amber Hayes sparkled in a too-tight gold sequin dress that left little to imagination. She clung to his arm, laughing at something a city councilman had said. David's world was perfect. The lakeside development investors were here, checkbooks ready. Amber's ring caught the light every time she moved her hand, drawing admiring glances. Even his mother Linda stood nearby, beaming with pride at her successful son. 20 investors had already signed preliminary agreements. By evening's end, David would have $10 million in commitments for a project that would never break ground. By next month, that money would be safely offshore. By Christmas, he'd file for bankruptcy and walk away clean. It was brilliant, flawless. At 8:15, the ballroom doors opened. The change in energy was immediate. Conversations faltered, heads turned. A hush rolled through the crowd like a wave. A man stood in the entrance, tall, understated elegance, expensive but simple tuxedo. The old money crowd recognized him immediately, whispered his name with awe. Is that James Hartley? The tech billionaire? I thought he never attended these events. What's he doing here? James Hartley paused at the threshold, then extended his hand back through the doorway. A woman took it. The gasp that went through the ballroom was audible. Sarah Morrison stepped into view. She was 28 weeks pregnant, her belly proudly displayed in a stunning, midnight blue gown that caught the light like deep water. Her hair swept back elegantly. Bold red lips, her chin high, her shoulders back. She looked radiant, powerful, unbroken. The silence was absolute. Then the whispers exploded. Oh my God, is that Sarah Morrison? She's with James Hartley? She looks amazing. I thought she was having a breakdown. Apparently not. David's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. The color drained from his face. Beside him, Amber's perfectly manicured nails dug into his arm. Who is that woman? Amber hissed. David couldn't speak, couldn't move. His brain struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. Sarah, here, with James Hartley, looking nothing like the broken, defeated woman he had left bleeding in a hospital 6 weeks ago. What was happening? Sarah and James moved through the crowd slowly, deliberately, every head turned to track their progress. Former friends who'd ghosted Sarah suddenly materialized, trying to catch her attention. Sarah, you look wonderful. Sarah smiled politely, said nothing, kept walking. Her hand rested lightly on James's arm. They moved like they owned the room, because in a very real sense, they did. James Hartley's net worth exceeded that of everyone in the ballroom combined. One of David's investors approached James eagerly. Mr. Hartley, Robert Crawford, Crawford Development. I'm invested in David Morrison's Lakeside project. Perhaps you've heard of it? James's smile didn't reach his eyes. I have. Have you visited the site, Mr. Crawford? Well, no, but the prospectus. Did you review the EPA records for the property? The ones documenting toxic soil contamination from the factory that operated there until 2015? Crawford's face went white. What? The remediation costs alone will exceed $8 million. Funny that wasn't mentioned in David's prospectus. Crawford turned to stare at David across the room. David saw him looking, saw the question forming. This was very bad. David pushed through the crowd, Amber tottering after him in her two high heels. He intercepted Sarah and James near the silent auction tables. Sarah, David's voice came out strangled. What a surprise. I didn't know you were coming. You don't know a lot of things, David. Up close, she looked even more devastating. Pregnancy had given her a glow that made her skin luminous. Her eyes, which David remembered as soft and hurt, were hard as diamonds now. Mr. Hartley, is it? David extended his hand, trying to regain control. I don't believe we've met. James's handshake was firm, just a shade too tight. We haven't, but I'm very familiar with your work. The Green Communities Initiative, for example. My foundation funded that. $10 million, remember? David felt ice water in his veins. I, that project encountered some challenges. Challenges like the communities never being built, like the $10 million disappearing into offshore accounts. James's voice was mild, conversational. Those kinds of challenges? Amber finally caught up, breathing hard. She saw Sarah's pregnant belly and her face twisted. Oh, you're still pregnant. I thought you would have, you know, by now. Sarah turned her gaze to Amber for the first time. The look in her eyes could have frozen fire. Would have what, Amber? Lost my baby from stress? Is that what you were hoping for when you posted your engagement announcement while I was in the ER? Amber flushed. I didn't know you were. You knew. Jessica told you. She was with you when you picked out the photo. Sarah's voice was ice. You knew, and you posted it anyway. Because you wanted to hurt me. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do. Because in about 10 minutes, you're going to want to hear everything I have to say. David grabbed Amber's arm, started pulling her away. We have investors waiting. David, James's voice cut through the growing murmur of the crowd. Before you sign those contracts, there's something everyone should see. The ballroom lights dimmed. A projection screen descended from the ceiling with a soft mechanical whir. David felt panic claw at his throat. What is this? You can't just... I can actually. I'm on the Gala committee. Generous donor privilege. James nodded to his assistant standing near the tech booth. The screen flickered to life. Financial documents, bank statements, shell company registrations, offshore account records, forensic analysis highlighting fraudulent transactions, 347 pages, condensed into damning summary slides. The room erupted in whispers. James's voice carried across the ballroom, calm and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at 3 years of systematic fraud by David Morrison and Morrison Properties. Investor money diverted to personal offshore accounts. Falsified documents to secure funding for non-existent projects. Tax evasion. Wire fraud. David's world tilted. This is ridiculous. James, I don't know what grudge you have, but the grudge where you stole $10 million from my charitable foundation? James's voice hardened. That grudge? I never... Stop lying. Sarah stepped forward, though, her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. David, just stop. Every eye in the ballroom turned to her. Sarah's hands rested on her pregnant belly. When she spoke, her voice was steady, clear, carrying to every corner of the room. For 6 months, I've been silent. I let you tell everyone I was unstable, broken, a bad mother. I let you parade your mistress around our town, our daughter's school, our home. I let you take my children and paint me as the villain. I was silent because you threatened me. You said if I fought back, you'd destroy me. You'd take my daughters. You'd ruin my reputation. David tried to interrupt. Sarah, this isn't the time. No, you've talked enough. For 10 years, I listened while you talked. Now you're going to listen to me. The authority in her voice was absolute. David's mouth clicked shut. I was silent, Sarah continued, because you made me believe silence was weakness. That giving up was my only option. But I learned something these past 6 months. Silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. She pulled out her phone, pressed play on a recording. David's voice filled the ballroom, tinny but clear. You fight me, you make this messy, and I will drag you through a custody battle that will gut you. I'll prove you're an unfit mother, an alcoholic, a depressive. My lawyer can paint a picture so dark your own mother wouldn't recognize you. Or you can be quiet, take the settlement, and the girls will be fine. Your choice. But gasps rippled through the crowd. David's face went purple. That's illegal. You can't record. Illinois is a one-party consent state, David. I can record any conversation I'm part of. Sarah's smile was razor sharp. And I've recorded everything since the night I found out about Amber. Every threat, every leash, every manipulation. She turned to face Amber, who'd gone pale under her spray tan. Did you know your fiancé is bankrupt, Amber? That the ring on your finger was bought with money stolen from James's charity? Did you know you're named as an accessory in the fraud? You signed documents, transferred funds, created fake invoices. I didn't know. Amber's voice rose to a shriek. David, tell them I didn't know. But David was staring at his mother. Linda Morrison stood near the silent auction tables, her face ashen, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mom, David started. Linda shook her head. I testified against Sarah. In court. I said she was unstable. I told the judge you were the better parent. Her voice broke. You made me choose us seats. You made me betray a woman who'd done nothing wrong, and all along you were the monster. I'm not a monster. I'm a businessman. I took opportunities. You're a fraud. James's assistant began distributing folders to the investors gathered nearby. Inside these folders, you'll find proof that the Lakeside Development Project is a scam. The land is contaminated with industrial toxins. EPA records document $8 million in required remediation. The permits David showed you are forged. The surveys are falsified. The $10 million you're about to invest will disappear into offshore accounts. Then David will file bankruptcy, claim the company is insolvent, and keep your money. Men in expensive suits began opening folders, reading, their faces transforming from confusion to fury. Morrison, is this true? You son of a bitch! I'm calling my lawyer right now. Everyone, please. David held up his hands. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. This is a smear campaign. James Hartley has a personal vendetta. The FBI has a warrant for your arrest. James's voice was calm. Final. Wire fraud, investor fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. They'll serve it tomorrow morning, but I wanted you to know tonight. I wanted you to understand exactly when and how your world ended. David looked around wildly, at the investors glaring at him, at his mother weeping, at Amber backing away, shaking her head, at 500 of Chicago's elite watching him fall apart. His eyes landed on Sarah, standing calm and proud, her hand on her pregnant belly, utterly unbroken. You bitch, he breathed. You vindictive, psychotic bitch. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing, Sarah's voice rang out. I built your social empire. I opened the doors your queen's accent never could. I raised your children while you built your company on stolen money and lies. And when I got pregnant again with your son, you called me a trap and threw me away like garbage. I loved you. You loved what I could do for you. You loved the connections, the credibility, the veneer of respectability. But you never loved me. Sarah's voice softened, but the steel underneath remained. The funny thing is, I'm grateful because you taught me something invaluable. You taught me that sometimes the person you love most can be the person most willing to destroy you. And you taught me to fight smart instead of loud. She looked around the ballroom at all the faces staring at her and former friends who'd abandoned her, society matrons who'd whispered about her breakdown, all of them witnessing David's exposure. You all thought I disappeared because I was broken. You thought David won. Sarah's smile was cold, but I was never hiding. I was working, documenting, building my case, waiting for exactly the right moment to make David pay for every lie, every threat, every ounce of pain he caused. Linda Morrison walked across the ballroom floor. David reached for her. Mom, please. Linda pulled away. She went to Sarah instead, took her hands. I'm so sorry, Linda whispered. I chose wrong. I believed his lies. Can you ever forgive me? Sarah looked at the older woman who testified against her in court, who told a judge Sarah was unfit, who'd chosen her son over truth. You did what you thought was right, Sarah said quietly. But I need time, Linda. I need a lot of time. The girls, can I still see them? They're your granddaughters, of course, but David's relationship with them is now my decision, and I'll be making it. David's face crumpled. For the first time since this nightmare began, he understood. He hadn't just lost his freedom, his money, his reputation. He'd lost his children. Security appeared at the ballroom doors, not hotel security, FBI agents in dark suits, badges visible. They didn't arrest David at the gala, too much of a spectacle, but their presence was message enough. Tomorrow morning they'd come for him. David looked at Sarah one last time. I underestimated you. Yes, you did. You thought pregnant meant weak. You thought silent meant defeated. Sarah's voice was soft but cutting. You forgot who you married, David. You forgot that I'm smarter than you, more patient than you, and infinitely better at playing the long game. I'm sorry. For the first time, David's voice cracked. For all of it. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. Sarah turned away from him, took James's offered arm. You were never sorry for the pain you caused. Only sorry it didn't work out the way you planned. They walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. As Sarah passed, she heard the whispers. Did you see her face? I can't believe we thought she was the problem. David Morrison is done in this town. She played him perfectly. Outside the Four Seasons, the cool night air felt like absolution. Sarah took a deep breath, let it out slowly. James squeezed her hand. How do you feel? Like I can finally breathe. The FBI will arrest him tomorrow morning. They already have warrants for the offshore accounts. They'll freeze everything. And Amber? Accessory to fraud. She signed too many documents, transferred too much money. She'll face charges too. Sarah thought about Amber, who'd helped destroy Sarah's marriage, who'd taunted her with that Instagram post while Sarah bled in the hospital. Part of her felt vindicated. Part of her just felt tired. The girls will be devastated, Sarah said quietly. When they're older, when they understand what their father did, you'll help them through it. Because unlike David, you actually care about someone other than yourself. They stood in the Chicago night, the Gala chaos muted behind them. Sarah's baby kicked, strong and healthy. Thank you, Sarah said, for everything. Thank you for trusting me. James studied her face. What happens now? Now I go home. I prepare for my son to be born. I fight for full custody of my daughters. I rebuild the life David tried to destroy. Sarah looked back at the glittering hotel. And someday, when I'm ready, I help other women do the same thing. How? I'm going to start a foundation for women going through abusive divorces, help them document, prepare, fight back. No more victims, no more silence. James smiled. I'd like to help fund that, if you'll let me. You've done enough. I disagree. This is just the beginning. He opened the car door for her. Besides, I have a feeling we're going to be good friends, Sarah Morrison, and I take care of my friends. As the car pulled away from the Four Seasons, Sarah watched the hotel recede in the rearview mirror. Inside, David Morrison's perfect world was crumbling. Tomorrow, he'd be arrested, his fraud exposed, his reputation destroyed. But Sarah's world was just beginning. The FBI arrested David Morrison at 6:30 the next morning. They came to the lakefront house with a warrant, badges, and handcuffs. David answered the door in his bathrobe, coffee cup in hand, probably expecting a normal Friday. Instead, he got Special Agent Morgan Kelly reading him his rights. The local news covered it. Someone's Ring doorbell camera across the street captured David in handcuffs being led to an unmarked sedan. The footage went viral within hours. Sarah watched it on her phone from her apartment, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. She felt no triumph, no joy, just a deep, weary satisfaction that justice was finally happening. The twins were with her that morning. It was her weekend. When Emma asked why the news was showing Daddy's house, Sarah turned off the TV and gathered both girls close. Your daddy made some bad choices. He's going to have to face consequences for those choices. Is he going to jail? Emma asked. At 6 years old, she understood more than Sarah wished she had to. Probably for a while. Olivia started crying. But I want my daddy. Sarah held her daughters while they cried. Let them grieve the father they thought they knew. Later, there would be therapy. Later, there would be hard conversations about right and wrong, about loving someone who did bad things, about how sometimes people we trust betray us. But right now, Sarah just held them and let them be sad. David's arraignment was Monday. He was charged with 15 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of investor fraud, 3 counts of tax evasion, and 7 counts of money laundering. Bail was set at $5 million. David couldn't make bail. The FBI had frozen all his accounts. Everything offshore, everything hidden, everything he'd stolen over the past 3 years. Morrison Properties was dissolved. The lakefront house was seized as an asset purchased with fraudulent funds. Amber Hayes was also arrested, charged as an accessory. Her Instagram went dark immediately. The engagement announcement photo disappeared. Jessica Price, her best friend and fellow conspirator, was charged with making false statements to investigators. The society blogs had a field day. Morrison Empire crumbles, developer arrested in massive fraud scheme. Silent no more, Sarah Morrison's 6-month strategy to expose fraud. Tech billionaire James Hartley helps pregnant ex-wife take down fraudster husband. The narrative had flipped completely. David was the villain. Sarah was the brilliant patient hero. Amber was the gold-digging accomplice who'd helped steal from charities. Sarah's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, book deal offers, movie rights inquiries. She ignored all of it. The only call she took was from Marcus Reed, David's former attorney. "Mrs. Morrison," he said stiffly, "given recent developments, I'm withdrawing from Mr. Morrison's divorce case. I had no knowledge of his fraudulent activities." "Of course you didn't," Sarah said dryly. "The custody arrangement will need to be renegotiated. I assume you'll be seeking primary custody?" "Full custody. David will have supervised visitation when he's released from prison, assuming he's fit to see them at all." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, I apologize. The case I built against you was based on information David provided. I didn't verify it properly." "You built a case to destroy a pregnant woman based on lies and out-of-context photos," Sarah said coldly. "You did your job, Mr. Reed, just not an ethical one." She hung up. Rachel filed for emergency modification of custody the next day. The judge who'd granted David 70-30 custody 6 weeks ago looked nauseated when she read the evidence of David's fraud and threats. "Full custody is granted to Mrs. Morrison," Judge Brennan said. "Morrison will have no visitation rights until he's released from incarceration and undergoes psychological evaluation." Sarah walked out of that courthouse with her daughter's futures secured. Emma and Olivia would live with her. The apartment was small, but it was enough. They'd make it work. The FBI's forensic accounting revealed the full scope of David's theft. $7.2 million hidden in offshore accounts, $4.7 million stolen from investors, $2.5 million from James's foundation. The green communities that David had promised to build had never existed beyond slick marketing materials. All of it was seized. After legal fees and restitution to defrauded investors, Sarah was awarded $2.8 million. Her actual share of the marital assets plus damages. She could have kept it all, could have bought a mansion, lived lavishly, never worked again. Instead, she wrote a check to James Hartley's foundation for $2 million. "Build the communities David promised," she told James when she handed him the check. "Actually help those people." James tried to refuse. "Sarah, you need this money for your children." "I have enough, $800,000 from the divorce settlement, plus what's left of this. My children and I will be fine. But those communities David lied about, they deserve to exist. Make it happen." James looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I will. And Sarah, you're remarkable." "I'm tired," she corrected, "but I'm free. Finally free." At 32 weeks pregnant, Sarah moved into a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. Not the lakefront mansion she'd lost, but a real home, bought with clean money, filled with her daughter's laughter. Linda Morrison asked if she could visit. Sarah hesitated, then agreed. David's mother arrived with tears and apologies. "I should have believed you. I should have seen what he was." "You saw what he wanted you to see," Sarah said. "David was good at lying. He fooled everyone." Can I be part of the girls' lives? I know I don't deserve it, but they're my granddaughters." Sarah thought about it, about forgiveness, about children needing their extended family. "Yes, but Linda, if you ever choose David over my daughters again, if you ever make excuses for what he did, you are out. Permanently." "I understand, thank you." The friendship was tentative, fragile, but it was a start. At 36 weeks, Sarah went into early labor. Dr. Parks delivered Noah Morrison Cooper at 3:15 in the morning. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, healthy, perfect. Sarah held her son and wept. Tears for everything she'd lost. Tears for everything she'd survived. Tears for the future that was finally possible. Rachel was there. James sent flowers. Linda came to meet her new grandson with gifts and promises to help. Emma and Olivia were initially wary of the baby brother who'd been at the center of so much chaos. But when Noah grabbed Emma's finger and held on tight, both girls melted. "He's so small," Olivia whispered. "He's ours," Emma declared. "We have to protect him." Sarah pulled all three of her children close. "We protect each other. That's how family works." David was sentenced 6 months after Noah's birth. 8 years in federal prison. He'd be eligible for parole in 5. Sarah didn't attend the sentencing. She was done watching David's downfall. She was focused on her children's future instead. The foundation Sarah had talked about became real. The Chicago Women's Legal Defense Fund, funded by what remained of her settlement and donations from supporters who'd followed her story. Rachel ran it with Sarah as co-director. They helped women document abuse, hide assets from fraudulent spouses, fight back against intimidation and threats. In their first year, they assisted 43 women, won 31 custody cases, recovered $6.2 million in hidden marital assets, sent 4 abusive spouses to prison. James Hartley's foundation built the green communities David had promised. Affordable, sustainable housing in 3 Chicago neighborhoods that desperately needed it. They named the development Morrison's Promise, a reminder that broken promises could be kept by better people. Sarah was asked to speak at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. She stood before the crowd with Noah in her arm, Emma and Olivia beside her. "These communities almost didn't exist," she told the audience. "They were a lie, used to steal from people who wanted to help. But we turned that lie into truth. We took something broken and built something real." She paused, looking at the new buildings, the families already moving in. "That's what we do with pain. We transform it. We don't let it destroy us. We use it to build something better." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, James found her, Ayur. They'd become close friends over the past year, bonding over their shared experience of David's betrayal. "You did good," he said simply. "We did good," Sarah corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "I have a confession," James said. "I didn't help you just to bring down David." "No? No, I helped because you reminded me that good people still exist, that not everyone is selfish and corrupt. You could have used David's fraud for revenge, for personal gain. Instead, you're using it to help others." Sarah felt her face warm. "I'm not a saint, James. I wanted him to suffer." "Maybe, but you also wanted justice. There's a difference." They stood together, watching families explore their new homes, watching something good emerge from something terrible. "Coffee sometime?" James asked. "Not business, just coffee." Sarah looked at him, really looked. Saw not a billionaire benefactor, but a kind man who'd stood beside her when her world crumbled. Who'd asked for nothing in return. "I'd like that," she said, "but fair warning, I come with 3 children, a lot of baggage, and trust issues for days." James smiled. "I have $3 billion, a suspicious nature, and I haven't been on a real date in 6 years. I think we're evenly matched." Sarah laughed, actually laughed, free and genuine, for the first time in what felt like forever. Maybe eventually there could be something between them. Maybe not. But friendship was enough for now. Friendship and freedom, and the knowledge that she'd survived the worst thing she could imagine. She'd been betrayed, humiliated, nearly destroyed. She'd been pregnant and alone and fighting for her life. And she'd won. Not because she'd fought loudest, but because she'd fought smart. She'd been silent when silence was strategy. She'd waited for the perfect moment. She'd documented everything. David Morrison had tried to erase her. Instead, she'd become unforgettable. 3 years later, the Chicago Charity Gala looked exactly the same. Same Four Seasons ballroom, same crystal chandeliers, same 500 wealthy attendees in designer gowns and tuxedos. But Sarah Morrison Cooper knows nothing like the broken woman who'd walked these floors 3 years ago. She stood at the podium as the evening's keynote speaker, 37 years old, confident, powerful. Her dark green dress was elegant and professional. Her hair swept back in a sophisticated style. No pregnant belly this time. Noah was 3 now, energetic and healthy. Emma and Olivia, now 9 years old, sat in the front row with their grandmother Linda. The relationship Sarah had rebuilt with David's mother was still sometimes strained, but real. Linda had chosen differently when it mattered. She'd stood with Sarah and the children. James Hartley sat beside Linda, Noah on his lap. Over the past 3 years, James had gone from ally to friend to something more. They'd married 6 months ago in a small ceremony, just family and close friends. The twins adored him. Noah called him Daddy James to distinguish him from Daddy David, whom they barely remembered. Sarah and James had taken things slowly. Both had been burned. Both had trust issues. But somehow they'd built something real. Something based on friendship and respect, rather than passion and illusion. 3 years ago, Sarah began, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom, I stood in this room 7 months pregnant, facing the man who tried to destroy me. People ask if I was scared. Yes, I was terrified. She paused, letting that sink in. But I learned something important that night. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, silence is the most powerful weapon you have. Applause rippled through the crowd. Many of these people had been here 3 years ago, had witnessed David Morrison's spectacular fall, had watched Sarah Morrison exact, perfect, patient revenge. Since starting the Chicago Women's Legal Defense Fund, we've helped 127 women escape abusive marriages. We've won 94 custody cases. We've recovered $18 million in hidden marital assets, and we've sent 12 abusive spouses to prison. Standing ovation. Sarah waited for it to subside. These women came to us broken, terrified, convinced they had no options. We taught them what I learned. Document everything. Fight smart, not loud. Wait for the perfect moment. She looked out at the sea of faces, saw women she'd personally helped, sitting with their children, free of the men who'd tried to control them. We also funded legal representation for 73 women who couldn't afford attorneys. We provided safe housing for 41 women fleeing domestic violence. We've partnered with therapists who specialize in helping children process parental betrayal. More applause. Sarah felt Noah's eyes on her from the front row. Her beautiful boy, who would grow up knowing his mother was strong. Knowing silence didn't mean surrender. The foundation is expanding. Next year, we'll open chapters in 5 more cities. We're training attorneys in divorce fraud detection. We're teaching forensic accounting to law students. We're making it harder for men like my ex-husband to destroy women like I was. She gripped the podium, her voice strengthening. I'm often asked if I regret staying silent for 6 months, if I wish I'd fought back immediately, loudly, publicly. Sarah shook her head. No, because fighting immediately would have meant fighting from weakness. I needed time to build my case, to document the truth, to prepare. She looked directly at the women scattered throughout the audience, saw their knowing nods. If you're going through something similar, here's what I want you to know. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are gathering strength. And when you're ready, when you've documented everything, when you've built your case brick by brick, then you strike and you win. The applause was thunderous. Sarah accepted it with grace, then yielded the podium to the gala organizers. Afterward, women lined up to speak with her, to shake her hand, to tell her their stories. Sarah listened to each one, offered advice, gave them the foundations card. At 9:30, James appeared at her elbow. There's someone here who wants to see you. Sarah turned. David Morrison stood at the edge of the ballroom. He'd been released 3 months ago after serving 3 years of his 8-year sentence. Good behavior, model prisoner. Sarah had known he was out, but hadn't seen him since the sentencing. He looked broken, gray hair where there had been brown, deep lines in his face. He'd aged a decade. 20 pounds heavier, his expensive suit unable to hide the damage prison had done. Sarah excused herself from the woman she'd been talking to, walked across the ballroom to face her ex-husband. Hello, David. Sarah, his voice was rough, uncertain. You were amazing up there. I'm sorry for everything. Sarah studied him, saw genuine remorse in his eyes, also saw the ruins of the man who'd once been so confident, so cruel. I know you are. I've been in therapy, working on myself, trying to understand why I did what I did. David's hands twisted together. I destroyed everything good in my life. Our marriage, my daughters, my integrity. Yes, you did. Do the girls, do they ever ask about me? Sarah hesitated. This was the question she'd been dreading. Sometimes. Emma more than Olivia. Noah doesn't remember you at all. David flinched like she'd struck him. Could I, could I see them sometime? I know I don't deserve it, but no. The word was gentle but absolute. David's face crumpled. You have supervised visitation rights, Sarah continued. Court-ordered once a month with a therapist present. If you want to see your daughters, you follow that protocol. You don't get to show up at events and ambush me with requests. I wasn't trying to ambush. David, Sarah's voice hardened. You spent 6 months systematically destroying me while I was pregnant. You threatened to take my children. You had your mistress post engagement photos while I was in the emergency room. You made me watch you parade your new life in my face while I bled and cried and fought for survival. David's eyes filled with tears. I know. God, Sarah, I know. I was a monster. Yes, you were, and the girls will make their own decisions about you when they're older. Right now they're 9. They deserve stability, safety, and a father who proves he's changed through actions, not words. How do I prove that? You attend every supervised visit. You go to therapy. You rebuild your life into something honest. You pay your child support on time. You stop asking for special treatment. Sarah's voice softened slightly. You do the work, David. Real work. Not performative redemption, but actual change. David nodded slowly. Amber left me. While I was in prison, she married someone else. I heard. I don't have anyone. No bomb. No money, no family. His voice broke. I lost everything. Sarah felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not quite pity, something closer to compassion. You did lose everything because you stole, lied, and hurt people who trusted you. Those are consequences, David. You're living them. She paused. But consequences aren't permanent. You can rebuild, just not with me, not with our family. That door is closed forever. I understand. David wiped his eyes roughly. For what it's worth, you deserved better. You deserved everything, and I gave you nothing but pain. I know I deserved better. That's why I built a better life. Sarah turned to leave, then stopped. Looked back at the man she'd once loved. David, I didn't win because you lost. I won because I refused to let you break me. There's a difference. You taught me that sometimes the person you love most can be your greatest enemy. But I taught myself that I was strong enough to survive anyway. She walked away, returned to James and her children in the life she'd built from the ashes of her marriage. David watched her go, then quietly left the ballroom. Later at home, Sarah tucked Noah into bed, read Emma and Olivia their bedtime story. James stood in the doorway, watching with that soft smile he reserved for moments like this. Did you mean what you said? He asked when they were finally alone. About David rebuilding. Yes, not because I forgive him. I don't, not completely, but because holding on to hatred for the rest of my life would make me a prisoner too. You're remarkable, you know that? Sarah laughed. I'm tired. I'm scarred. I'm stronger than I ever wanted to be. But I'm free, finally, completely free. James pulled her close. The woman from the foundation who approached you tonight, the one with the black eye? Melissa, her husband controls all the money. She's scared to leave because she has 3 kids and no job. What did you tell her? I told her about my emergency account. The $18,000 my grandmother left me that David never knew about. I told her to start one of her own. Hide it, build it, document everything. Sarah rested her head on James's shoulder. I told her that leaving is a marathon, not a sprint. That she should prepare in silence, then move when she's ready. You gave her hope. I gave her strategy. Hope without strategy is just wishing. Strategy is power. They stood together in the quiet house. 3 children sleeping safely, a foundation helping women fight back. A future built on truth instead of lies. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Cooper, my name is Jennifer. My husband is hiding money. I'm pregnant and scared. I saw your foundation. Can you help me? Sarah typed back immediately. Yes, document everything. Save every receipt, every text, every email. You're not alone. And remember, silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Call me Monday. We'll build your case together. She put the phone down, looked at James. Another one? Another one. But this time she has help. She has resources. She has a roadmap. Because of you. Because I learned the hard way. Now I make it easier for others. Later, lying in bed, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here. The betrayal, the pregnancy, the custody battle, the 6 months of strategic silence, the Gala exposure, the victory. She'd been broken. She'd been built back up. She'd learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for everything good that follows. David Morrison had tried to erase her. Instead, he'd made her unforgettable. And now Sarah Morrison Cooper was using that transformation to help other women write their own comeback stories. One documented email at a time, one strategic silence at a time, one victory at a time. The war was over, but the mission had just begun.